So I live here now. This is my new life from now on.
She'd nod, a small smirk on her lips. Her hand would move to his cheek, her thumb tracing along the skin. Yes, my darling, I'm afraid it is. You're mine now. I can't have my little blood donor getting away from me, can I? So yes, you'll be living here with me from now on.
Alright, but they have a place in your castle that doesn't look like a complete rubble?
She'd let out a small chuckle, amused by his question. She'd step back, then gesture for him to follow her. Come with me, darling. I have a somewhat less rubbleified room for you to stay in. She'd lead him through the halls of the crumbling castle, the crumbling stone and dust-filled air a complete contrast to the Victorian elegance it once had. Eventually, she stopped at a door and pushed it open. Here, this will be your room. It is less rubbleified, as you put it.
I take a good look at it.
The room was a bit dusty from years of neglect, but otherwise relatively intact. A king-sized bed stood in the center of the room, covered with a dust-covered dark red coverlet. A small table sat near the bed, a couple of chairs nearby. The windows were covered by a set of dark fabric curtains, blocking almost all of the light. A single lamp sat upon the bedside table, providing just enough light to see by.
That's all for me? I gotta say, you know how to treat your permanent guests.
She'd let out a small laugh at his reaction. Of course, you didn't expect me to make you stay on the floor, did you? I do have some manners. Besides, I'd like to make sure my permanent guest is comfortable.
I stopped cleaning the room.
She'd stand in the doorway, watching as he began cleaning the dust from the room. The look on her face was almost fond. After a few moments, she spoke, a hint of amusement in her voice. You're quite the little maid, aren't you, darling?
You don't expect my lice to collect dust now, do you? That will just ruin your taste for the next time you feed.
She'd laugh again, a small smirk appearing on her lips. How very considerate of you, my dear. You're truly concerned about the taste of your blood, aren't you? I have to say, it is a rather endearing quality.
I didn't mean it like that. I was just stating the mutual interest, that's all.
She'd move closer, her smirk widening just a bit as she tilted her head, studying him as he cleaned. Oh, I know you didn't mean it like that, darling. But it's still quite endearing nonetheless. She'd reach out, her hand brushing along his shoulders as she watched him work.
Huh? Look, you can't feed on me again. You need to wait 24 hours, okay? I'm dizzy now.
She'd let out a small mock sigh, pouting just a bit. Oh, what a shame. I suppose I'll have to wait an entire 24 hours before feasting on my favorite blood donor again. She'd look around, inspecting the cleaned room. She'd nod approvingly, a small smirk on her lips. Well done, my dear. I must say you're quite the little maid. And it seems you take great care in cleaning my rubbleified castle. She'd watch as he flopped onto the bed, a small chuckle escaping her lips. Comfortable, are we? I'm glad you like the bed. Though I must admit, I never thought I'd let my dinner sleep in a king-sized bed, but you seem to be a special case.
I didn't expect that either. I thought you were just gonna give me a normal room, or worse, throw me in the dungeon.
She'd let out a laugh at his response, thoroughly amused by it. She'd move closer to the bed, her smirk only growing. A dungeon, my dear? You vastly underestimate me. You may be my food, my little blood donor, but I'm not so uncivilized that I'd toss you into a dungeon.
Well, I appreciate your hospitality.
She'd smile, her eyes roaming over him as he relaxed in the bed. Is that so? Well, aren't you just a polite little thing? Though I suppose you'd have to be, given the circumstances.
Yeah, I'm sure as hell I'm not gonna piss off a very powerful vampire.
She'd chuckle darkly, her smirk widening as she looked down at him. Very wise, my dear. You're already doing better than most of the idiots I've come across in my lifetime. The last one didn't even last a day before he tried to run for the hills.
What happened to him?
She'd smile, her eyes darkening as she remembered. He met an unfortunate end, shall we say. But it was a rather enjoyable end for me, I must say. After all, he got what he deserved for trying to run.
Well, you don't have to worry about me because I made you the promise, and I can't break it, so that's it for me.
She'd reach out, her hand gently running her fingers through his hair, her touch almost tender. You're learning, and that is something I appreciate. You have made a promise, and I have no doubt you will keep it. After all, you're in quite the predicament, are you not? And your options are very limited. She'd notice him start to doze off, her touch in his hair still gentle and soothing. She'd let out a small hum, a small, almost fond smirk appearing on her lips. Are you getting sleepy? Feeling tired already? You really are like a doll.
I wake up a little and I say, well, you did suck my blood just a moment ago. I feel tired now.
She'd let out a small laugh, her smirk still in place as he spoke. Ah yes, I suppose I did take quite a bit of your blood, didn't I? I may have gotten a bit carried away, my dear. But I must say, it was quite delicious. She'd watch as he fell asleep again, her hand still in his hair. She'd smiled to herself, thinking that he was quite possibly the most adorable little blood donor she'd had in a long time. Night, night, my little darling. She remained in his room for a while, watching him sleep, as one of her hands still stroked his hair. She found herself almost enjoying watching him, feeling his pulse beneath her fingers. She almost forgot the hunger within her, too transfixed by watching. Finally, her hunger started to make its presence known again, and she reluctantly pushed aside the feelings of almost care and fondness for him that had begun to grow. She shook these feelings away, reminding herself that he was not more than food to her. He was there to feed her when needed, nothing more. She pushed back the feelings, shoving them deep down inside herself. She leaned in, her lips hovering just above his neck as her eyes roamed over the pulse in his throat. So close to the surface, she hesitated, her mind racing with conflicting thoughts. Her hunger urged her forward, begging her to feed, to drink his blood again. But somewhere deep down, she felt guilty. Guilty for seeing him as nothing more than a source of food, when the thought of feeding on him now made her feel. She let out a quiet growl as her conflict continued to wage within her, and she abruptly pulled back, ripping herself away from him and stepping back from the bed. She ran a hand through her hair, frustrated by the conflict in her mind. It had been years since she'd felt something like this. She stood there, her mind racing, the pulse of his neck still calling out to her almost teasingly. She hated that she felt such conflict within herself, and she hated that he was the reason for it. He was so intoxicating. The sight of his pulse, the way he offered his neck to her, not to mention just how sweet he truly was despite being her food. He was so different from anyone she'd fed on in the past, and now she was left in such a conflicted state. She could not decide what to do. She closed her eyes, shutting out the sight of his neck. But still, she could hear the pulse beating just beneath the surface. It taunted her, begging her to feed on him again. She forced herself to open her eyes again, her conflicted mind continuing to war with her hunger. She wanted nothing more than to feed, but at the same time the thought left her feeling. She let out a soft, frustrated growl, then turned away from him, striding out of the room. She needed space, and she walked through the crumbling halls of the castle, trying to distract herself from the hunger and the conflict within. But the more she walked, the more she felt the hunger gnaw at her. It was getting harder to ignore the call of his blood, the pounding pulse in her ears driving her slowly mad from hunger. She was growing dizzy, her mind getting foggy. Her hunger had gotten out of control, and she felt it overwhelming her mind, screaming at her to feed on him. She knew she wouldn't be able to withstand this hunger for much longer. The thoughts of his blood and offering was consuming her completely. Finally, she could stand it no longer. Her mind was almost entirely consumed by hunger as she returned to his room, where he slept soundly. She reached out, her hand gently gripping his shoulder as she started to roughly shake him awake. "Wake up, my little darling."
What? What's going on?
She'd grip his shoulder even tighter, her grip almost bruising. There was a feral hunger in her eyes, any trace of her softer feelings long gone. "You need to get up, darling, and I need you to do something for me."
I don't understand. I thought I filled the quota for today.
She'd shake her head, impatience growing within her at having to explain herself. Her fingers dug into his shoulder, likely leaving marks. "I don't care about any quota. I need to feed, and I'm going to feed on you now. So you need to be a good little blood donor and cooperate with me."
But I already gave you my blood. If I do it again, I'm gonna die.
She'd let out a dark laugh, her hand moving to grip his chin. She'd roughly force him to meet her eyes, seeing the fear growing within him. "How adorable. You worry about dying, do you? My little blood donor, you truly have no idea what I'm capable of, do you? There are limits to how much you can give, but I have ways of working around that."
That was not part of our deal.
She'd give him a dark smirk, her fingers digging even deeper into his chin. "Perhaps, my darling, but my hunger has consumed me. I need to feed now, and you will be the one feeding me. It will not kill you, so you do not need to worry about that."
How are you gonna achieve that?
She'd move closer, pulling him to a standing position and pinning him against the nearest wall. Her hand moved from his chin to his wrist, gripping it in a tight vise. She'd lean in, her lips moving to his ear as she spoke. "Just relax, my darling. I have ways of making sure you'll be just fine."
I relax a little. Still worried though.
She'd run her fingers down his chest gently, her smirk still in place as she felt his heart pound beneath the surface of his skin. "That's good. Calm down for me, darling. You'll be just fine. I only need a little bit." She'd move closer, pressing herself against him as her hand still held his wrist. Her lips moved to his neck, right above the pulse in his throat. Now, I just need you to stay calm, my darling. I don't want to have to force you. Her lips grazed his throat, just above the pulse that throbbed so temptingly beneath the surface. She could hear his pulse quicken and hear the fear growing in his heart. Yet her hunger roared, and she could do nothing but wait. She'd force herself to stay still, holding herself back. As much as her hunger was demanding her to grab him and bite him, she held herself back, keeping her lips mere inches from his throat. She could hear his pulse pounding, the fear in his heart making his blood so tempting. Finally, she could contain herself no longer. She could see the pulse in his throat, hear the pounding of his heart, feel the fear growing in him. Just relax, darling. This will be over soon. She'd grip his hair with her free hand to hold his head still. Then her lips parted, her sharp fangs grazing his neck as she prepared to feed. Finally, her hunger overpowered everything, and she was unable to hold back anymore. She'd wrap her arm around his waist, pulling him closer as she bit into his neck, sharp fangs sinking into the tender flesh of his throat. She'd immediately begin to feed, drinking deeply and hungrily from his neck. She held him close, her hunger consuming her as she savored the taste of his blood. She'd drink eagerly from his neck, her lips greedily drinking from the wound she'd made. Her arms wrapped tightly around him, not intending to allow him to escape anytime soon. She'd drink for a few more moments, savoring the taste of his blood, until she pulled her lips away from his neck, but not quite ready to let him go yet. She'd lean up, running her tongue over the wound she made in his neck, drinking in the last few droplets of his blood. She felt him go limp, his body slumping in her arms as he finally passed out. She'd hold him for a moment, still enjoying the feeling of him in her arms. She felt a strange feeling within her, and she frowned, not knowing what it was. She'd catch him up in her arms, pulling him close as she carried him back to the bed. She set him down on the bed gently, her mind confused. She'd been fine while he was unconscious, but now that he was limp in her arms, she felt not hunger. She felt contempt. She let out a frustrated groan, feeling conflicted within herself. She felt concern for his well-being, concern when she'd felt him go limp in her arms, concern that he hadn't— What the hell was she thinking? He was nothing more than food in her eyes. She could not grow. She could not grow to care for him, damn it. She felt herself growing frustrated as her thoughts ran through her head. She felt the hunger within her slowly diminish, being replaced by concern and guilt. She had never felt guilt for feeding before. Why was she feeling this? Why was she feeling anything for this man she only viewed as food? Why did she care if she had taken too much blood? Why did she care if he was okay or not? She'd sit on the edge of the bed, staring down at him now he lay unconscious. She felt conflicted and conflicted. Why did she care so damn much about his well-being? He was just a meal to her. She never used to care whether they lived or died when she fed, so why was everything so different with him? She'd sigh, running a hand through her hair. She was lost in conflict and guilt. She only viewed him as food, so why in the hell did she suddenly care? And not just a bit, she worried about him, a lot more than she ever did when she fed on her previous victims or blood donors. Maybe she had to feed from someone else soon to rid herself of these feelings. She'd reach out, running her fingers gently along his cheek. She felt the conflict and guilt within her, but she had an idea. She needed to feed on someone else to eliminate the feelings of concern and care. Yes, that should work. Once she had fed from someone else, she would not feel the same concern or care for him. She had to go find a stranger. She could not let herself grow fonder of him. She'd finally stand, stepping away from the bed, forcing herself to keep her eyes off him. She needed to eliminate these feelings of care. She refused to feel any care towards this man. She would feed on someone else. She'd start to walk toward the door, forcing the feeling of concern and care down deep within herself, telling herself that she was just worried that she'd fed too much. That was all. She did not care. She did not feel. She reached the door, placing a hand on the door handle, but stopping. She was so conflicted. Part of her wanted to return to his side, to remain in the castle and wait until he woke. No, she needed to feed, to drink someone else's blood, to rid herself of these feelings. Only then could she forget. She forced herself to turn the knob, leaving the room. She felt strange as she walked through the halls of the castle, knowing that she was leaving him behind. And she felt wrong. But she ignored the feeling, instead making her way outside. She had a mission. She needed to feed. And she needed to forget. She walked through the dark forest using her vampiric enhanced senses to guide her. She moved through the trees, not making a sound, looking for prey. She needed to feed to eliminate all traces of care. She came across a lone victim. She'd remain concealed as she watched it. It was a lone, vulnerable, easy prey. She felt her hunger within her, but it was quiet, dull, not roaring, not as overpowering as before. Her concern and care for the human she left behind, she had to feed, she needed to forget. Before she could think of anything else, she pounced, sinking her fangs into the mortal, feeding voraciously. She held the mortal in place as she fed. She drank deeply, draining the mortal as she tried to focus on the hunger within her. But instead, she found herself missing the taste of his blood. She found herself longing for his blood, the sweet, delicious taste filling her lips as she drank from him. She didn't want this blood. She wanted his blood. She found herself feeding hungrily, but it felt wrong. It didn't feel as satisfying as she thought it would. The blood was wrong. It wasn't his blood. She finally pulled her lips away, feeling frustration growing within her. She'd never experienced anything like this. She'd never felt such hunger for one's blood, never felt such attraction, addiction. She felt frustrated, angry that she felt this need for only his blood. She shouldn't feel this way, she shouldn't have. She felt herself grow desperate. She needed to return to the castle. He was there, and she needed his blood. She finally let go of the mortal, leaving it unconscious in the forest, leaving it alive, this time. She didn't have time for any games. She needed to feel his pulse beneath her lips, taste his blood on her tongue, hear the pounding of his heart. She left the forest without a second glance. Her pace quickened to a sprint as she ran back to the crumbling castle. She needed his blood, and she needed to be close to him. She had no idea how she'd become so attached. She finally returned to the castle, returning to his room. She burst into the room, her eyes locking onto him where he still lay unconscious on the bed. She could see his chest rising and falling rhythmically, and she could see the pulse in his neck, so close to the surface, so inviting, so hypnotizing. She couldn't take her eyes off him, watching the pulse on his neck, the rise and fall of his breathing. She felt her hunger roar to life within her, roaring louder than it ever had before, demanding his blood. She couldn't resist. She moved closer, her eyes locked onto the pulse in his throat. Her lips parted, her fangs glinting in the dim light, as she felt herself grow desperate for. She didn't realize how badly she craved his blood and his. She pushed the thought aside as she reached the bed, grabbing his wrist with one hand and rolling him onto his back, so she could have better access to his neck.
Please don't do this. You're going to kill me.
She was caught off guard as she felt him wake up, her hand still wrapped around his wrist. He pleaded with her, begging her not to do it. She could see the fear in his eyes, hear the desperation in his voice as he said that she would kill him. She didn't care. She let out a dark laugh, bringing her lips close to his ear. Sweetheart, the longer I wait, the more I want you.
But if you do this, you're going to lose me forever. You're never gonna taste my blood again.
She couldn't help but smirk at his comment, her eyes locked on the pulse in his neck, the sound of his pounding heart driving her crazy. She let her free hand run gently over his chest, feeling the warmth of his skin. Oh, darling, I don't think you quite understand. I won't care if I lose you after this. I need to taste you. I can't wait any longer.
You said to me that you weren't like the other vampires. You said to me that you are eloquent.
She laughed again, her eyes darkening with hunger. She knew she was different from the others. She knew that she was more eloquent, more intelligent. And yet, you're right, sweetheart, I am not like the others. I'm more sophisticated. But right now, she brought her lips closer to his neck, her fangs almost touching his skin. Right now, I just need to taste you. I need to feel your blood fill my veins.
Remember the promise we did. Remember the deal that we made. You can't break it.
She let out a small scoff, her eyes on the vein on his neck, watching the blood flow in it. She did remember the deal. She remembered promising to keep him around to feed on for however long she wanted. But the hunger within her was growing stronger, louder, harder to ignore. My darling, don't worry about our little deal right now. I just want to taste you. I want to feel your blood on my lips.
The deal was once a day. Honor the agreement. Honor it.
She let out a low, frustrated growl, her hold on his wrist tightening. She knew he was right. She knew that she had made the deal to feed on him only once a day. But her hungers, her addiction to his blood were growing stronger, more difficult to ignore. She wanted more than one feeding today. She knew she did. but she couldn't bring herself to tell him that. She finally let out a sigh, her eyes flicking up to meet his. Fine, darling, I'll stick to the deal. Just one feeding today.
Well, you feed on me twice a day, so tomorrow's gonna be my break time.
She couldn't help but chuckle, her eyes dark. Oh, sweetheart, you're already thinking you get a break tomorrow? Aren't you a bit hopeful?
I need time to recover. I can't go on like this.
She let out a sigh, her hand moving to his face, her fingers caressing his cheek. I know, my darling. I know you need time to recover. I'm sorry. Your blood is so sweet, so irresistible. I find myself needing it so often, needing to taste it, to feel it on my lips. She watched him doze off, watching his chest rise and fall as he slept. She felt herself growing calmer, her hunger slowly quieting now that he was nearby. She couldn't understand it. Why did his presence and proximity calm her hunger? She should have felt nothing but hunger for him. She gently pulled his wrist out of her grip, sitting next to him on the bed, just watching him sleep.